Right now on my Patreon, you can find an extended, uncut, uncensored version of this video. So if you want to see that version, head over to patreon.com right now. Now, let's get on with the video. Los Diablos is one of the most infamous gangs in Puerto Rico. That reputation has been well earned. From the streets to the music, all of it is connected. From facing federal indictments from Pennsylvania to New York to Puerto Rico and across the country, they're allegedly responsible for an international drug trafficking ring and are part of one of the most powerful narco empires in the Caribbean. On Friday, October 24th, 2025, federal authorities in Philadelphia descended on Waymo Street in Kensington. A 33-man indictment followed. Puerto Rico has a great story, one of indigenous heritage, Spanish colonization, and eventual transition to U.S. territory, marked by a rich cultural fusion of Taino, African, and European influences that created a distinct national identity. Initially inhabited by the Taino people, the island became a Spanish colony in the early 16th century, playing a strategic role in absorbing African slave labor and Spanish settlers. After over 400 years of Spanish rule, Puerto Rico was acquired by the United States in 1898, followed by the Spanish-American War, and its people were granted U.S. citizenship in 1917. There's a great video by Johnny Harris about the motives and consequences of the U.S. acquisition of the island. The United States recognized the importance of Puerto Rico's strategic position in the Caribbean and used a combination of coercion, military force, spying, and exploitation of the lands and resources to entrench its control. This mix of Boricua heritage and Spanish language and culture and the U.S. influences Puerto Rico has resulted in a unique culture, and it's developed an almost incredible amount of talent. Puerto Rico's music shows perfectly that mix between Taino, Spanish, and African influences like we mentioned earlier. From our ghettos, bamba, and salsa,
soy el cantante.
to reggaeton, blending dancehall and hip-hop. Even though this music style actually originates from Panama, it was quickly adopted and broadly popularized in the island during the 90s. Afterwards, artists like Daddy Yankee and Bad Bunny have made Puerto Rico a global music powerhouse. Popularly known as La Isla del Encanto, or the Charming Island, Puerto Rico has a population of over 3 million people who, since 1917, have been U.S. citizens. This U.S. territory status and the citizenship that comes with it has caused a really widespread diaspora to emerge all over the United States, with approximately 6 million people of Puerto Rican origin in the states, making it the second largest Hispanic group. The Northeast and Florida are home to the majority of the population in the mainland United States, with cities like New York, Orlando, Miami, and Philly having the most significant concentration of Puerto Ricans in the major cities. So how does this culturally rich, paradisiac island in the middle of the Caribbean turn into this?
Isla del Encanto. Isla del Encanto. Isla del Encanto. Isla del Encanto. Isla del Encanto.
Over the years on this channel, we've tried to understand and expose how, while senseless violence in the streets is not random, decades of easy access to firearms, a failed/underfunded school system, redlining, and disproportional poverty concentration in certain neighborhoods of Philly can arguably be pointed at as some of the biggest factors leading to the violence the city has experienced in the last couple of decades. This is true for most, if not all, big urban areas in the U.S., where poverty and inequality are oftentimes denominators for the areas with the highest violent crime rates, as shown and proven by many studies. We've talked on how all these factors, combined with poor judgment, lack of guidance, and emotional management, can result in these young men who only know the violence and pain that comes with the lie of the streets. When we combine all of that with the prevalence of social media in the last few years and the rise of drill rap, what we get is a recipe for disaster. Switches and ski masks, ops and rap disses, pain and death. This is the lie a lot of young men in urban areas fall into, and the consequences of these generational weights that keep a good portion of this population playing catch up with the non-criminal society. Whether you live in Puerto Rico or Philly, the effects of drill culture is the same.
Detrás del artista están la gente que está invirtiendo, están la gente que creyó en el artista y que son de la calle, sus chavos son de la calle, son un quilero, un narco, un esto, un lo otro y...
Seguimos mandándonos otro cabrón y son 30 para el que se pase. Y apenas verano y mis palos sonando por toda la metro.
Kilos de perico, los compramos en Santo Tomás, los metimos en Puerto Rico.
Figura como persona de interés en el asesinato del policía Eliezer Ramos Vélez.
La familia nunca muere, los que mandan Puerto Rico. Estamos flow YSL, pero evitando la ley rico.
Se alega que lanzan cuerpos humanos a los animales.
Even though in the last couple of decades, Puerto Rico has become way safer and its murder rate in 2024 was one of the lowest amongst Caribbean countries and territories, violent crime statistics have remained high on the island, even relative to the rest of the U.S. According to authorities, around 80% of this violent crime is directly correlated to gang rivalries and drug trafficking. And while the general violent crime rate has been seeing a slow but steady decline, these gang-related clashes escalated to the point where, according to studies, over 1.7 million people, 52% of the population, are exposed to these gang wars. The island's privileged geographical location makes it the perfect transshipment point for moving drugs from the south to the north of America. Since it's a U.S. territory, once the drugs land in this natural paradise in the Caribbean, they are, to all effects, already on U.S. soil. This status as the perfect narco-trafficking on-ramp fuels the violence in Puerto Rico. The streets run deep on the island. With all crime and violence, the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation was operating on a tight rope. And there was one prime example of the dangerous and fragile state of Puerto Rico's prison system. Rio Piedras, also known as El Oso Blanco or White Bear, with sometimes up to 20 inmates sharing a cell, an extremely violent environment with countless inmate murders, beheadings, and gang rapes on top of abusive power from the COs and their total impunity for all sorts of corruption.
Aquí es que duermen alrededor de 20 presos, aquí tirados en el piso en malas condiciones, ustedes pueden ver.
Yo me rompo con esa toalla.
Vean, como ustedes pueden ver, esa agua negra, ese canto de planchuela que está viniendo ahí, que se le puede caer encima a uno en la cabeza, puede tropear a uno de nosotros.
Esta es la galera que más está perjudicada y la sumaria abajo, que tampoco tienen ventilación. Problema que tenemos con la ropa, que tenemos que ponerla ahí, acomodar el lugar, cuando llueve se moja mucha de ella, polvorín que hay.
Solamente tenemos la facilidad de que tenemos los toilets y un solo lavamanos.
De ninguna forma pueda convivir aquí, ya que el hacinamiento, pues, es algo que es macabro aquí dentro y constituye lo que yo diría aquí el desorden y el crimen dentro de las mismas cárceles de Puerto Rico. Y diría que el mismo pueblo de Puerto Rico tiene conocimiento de esto. Nos ha llevado a nosotros a convivir en una forma que yo creo que aparte de ser inhumana es como a nivel de decir de animales en general.
Remontándonos a la década de los 80 y hasta el presente, el hacinamiento en el Oso Blanco es inhumano y desató lo que se conoce como el caso Morales Feliciano, confinado ya fallecido, que demandó al gobierno de Rafael Hernández Colón por no solo hacinamiento, sino por cuidado médico inapropiado, falta de un sistema de clasificación y una planta física en deterioro.
Inmates didn't have any other choice but group in gangs in order to protect themselves from other inmates, gangs, and even the guards. There are stories about inmates playing soccer with another inmate's head.
Cuentan del asesinato de un confinado en la guerra de las gangas, precisamente aquí en el Oso Blanco, en penitenciaría estatal. Resulta que a este confinado lo acorralan en una de las viviendas, lo matan y lo descuartizan y dejan el cuerpo regado por la vivienda en algunos sitios. Pero lamentablemente la extremidad encefálica, entiéndase la cabeza, la bajaron abajo y los presos comenzaron a jugar pelota con la cabeza. En un momento dado se da la orden y todos los presos vuelven a subir a las viviendas y la pelota se queda en la cancha. Los presos le dicen a un oficial de custodia: gobierno, mire, la pelota, que la necesitamos para mañana, que no se la vayan a perder, que la otra ganga no se la lleve. Y el compañero, pues, decide bajar abajo y buscar la alegada pelota. Cuando se está acercando, él comienza a entender que la alegada pelota no es otra cosa que la cabeza del confinado. Tanto fue el impacto emocional y psicológico en ese individuo que salió corriendo de la cancha. Hay algunos compañeros que me dicen que él cruzó los portones corriendo y gritando y tener una crisis nerviosa.
That's how in the late 70s and early 80s, two of these gangs would be born, Los Nietas and Grupo 27. Even though they shared the same general goal, looking for safety and a somewhat better life inside those walls, they definitely had different approaches, at least publicly. Los Nietas were founded and led by Carlos Torres Iriarte, aka La Sombra, or Shadow, as not only a gang to provide protection from other gangs in the COs, but also a political activist movement calling for the right of every Puerto Rican inmate to have humane living situations, following a series of riots, uprisings, and strikes in prison.
Sombra tenía costumbre de pelear con los guardias, porque él decía que él era Ayatollah Khomeini, decía que era don Pedro Viso Campos y decía que era Che Guevara. Y empezaba a gritar, neta, Puerto Rico tiene que ser libre. Empezamos a unirnos, y Sombra a gritar, neta, neta, neta. Bueno, que la asociación era para vivir en armonía, pelear contra el sistema carcelario, en las condiciones infrahumanas que se vivían antes.
That's obviously their version of events. On the other hand, Grupo 27, or Group 27, founded in July 1980 by Luis Pinella Pizarro, aka Chino Pinella, had a different strategy. According to the indictment, their main source of income consisted of extorting other inmates, charging taxes to those who brought drugs into the prison, or forcing inmates to make regular payments. They were also linked to the distribution of cocaine, heroin, marijuana, fentanyl, and other drugs within Puerto Rican prisons. Apparently, the gang also received substantial assistance from prison officials and from members of the organizations who were free on the outside. This methodology would eventually be copied, adopted, and expanded, becoming the model for prison gangs as we know them today in the United States. On March 30th, 1981, the leader of G27, Rafael Ayala Ortiz, aka Manota, allegedly, with the help of paid-off authorities, plotted Sombra's murder, helping to destabilize the Nieta. That afternoon, Sombra, who was accompanied by an officer who was in on the plot, was attacked on his return from the chapel, which was located just west of the recreational yard. He was stabbed in the chest, stomach, and back, and then shot by a .38 caliber pistol. He was pronounced dead sometime after sunset.
30 de marzo de 1981, lo mataron a Carlos La Sombra. Los muchachos bajan, lo cogen creyendo que está vivo, pero ya el hombre estaba muerto. Ya no había más nada que buscar. Ya el hombre era cadáver, pues tenía más de 6 o 7 puñales encima. Y el tiro en la frente. ¿Quién se va a salvar con eso? Nadie, difícil.
After the burial of their leader, the Nieta exploded into an all-out rampage and took over several wings of the prison compound. They brutally retaliated against G27's leader, Manota. After a few days of digging and chiseling their ways through the prison walls with spoons and their bare hands, they broke through the wall of Manota's prison cell and stabbed him over 150 times and cut his body into 84 pieces, allegedly. There were rumors that certain parts of his body were mailed to selected people. A severed finger to his mother, his ankle and foot were sent to the warden of the institution, and there were stories of his eyes being sent to G27's second in command. The rest of his body was never recovered. Both gangs grew exponentially and eventually expanded their reach, first into the streets of Puerto Rico and then the prison systems and the streets of the East Coast of the mainland United States. They each had their own colors, moral codes, and gang signs and chants. Honestly, we can make a whole video just about El Oso Blanco, Nietas, G27, and everything that went down in the living hell that was that prison. It's a lot of crazy situations, So if this is something you would want to see in a video later on, let us know in the comment section. Back to the streets, the gang and drug-related violence between the different caseríos or housing projects would only intensify, like I said before. These all-out wars for the control of the streets have taken countless lives all over the island. In some cases, offering public housing up to 7,000 people, these caseríos became the perfect breeding ground for violence fueled by these drugs and gangs. Caserías like Sabana Abajo, Manuel A. Perez, Juana Matos, and many others have been suffering the effects of these conflicts for decades. This was extended all across the island, but its effects were especially brutal in the metropolitan area of San Juan. Powerful drug kingpins ran a lot of these projects, with turf wars causing a devastating increase in crime on the whole island. Law enforcement was both underfunded and corrupt equally, and the fight against these powerful enterprises was virtually impossible. The violence got to the point where even some of the most powerful and feared drug kingpins, or bichotes, on the island tried to establish some order in the chaos that the streets had become. The group La Ono was originally formed by Jose Lopez Rosario, also known as Coco Blin Blin. From there, Angel Ayala Vasquez, aka Angelo Miñones, or El Buster, and Pito Paz had joined the organization. The idea was for all drug traffickers to stop their turf wars and work together with a set of rules and regulations in order to form a powerful empire that cannot be overthrown by the Puerto Rican police. La ONU, a play of words with Spanish for United Nations, was established in 1995. La ONU controlled local gangs like Los Extranjeros, Los Anomales, and Bin Laden Records, coordinated shipments from Latin America, and by 2004 dominated drug trade across Puerto Rico. In 2009, Ayala Vasquez and 65 members were arrested with over $100 million taken in assets.
Ángel Ayala Vázquez llegó a controlar la organización de narcotráfico más poderosa en Puerto Rico, según oficiales federales y locales. De acuerdo con la acusación en su contra, dominó puntos de drogas y suplió narcóticos en casi toda la isla, además de exportar a Estados Unidos.
Era como una leyenda urbana, un urban legend.
Según la acusación federal, Angelo Millones lavaba sus ganancias comprando autos de lujo y de carreras, así como botes y casas. Lo hacía bajo los nombres de otras personas. Además, costeaba fiestas de Navidad con enormes tarimas y la presentación de reconocidos cantantes. Ninguno de esos artistas fue acusado.
Violence continued, including revenge killings targeting family members. Key leaders' deaths and arrests marked the group's decline, but members still remained involved in murders and trafficking. The stain of all that violence started to switch the focus of some urban artists who saw a void in the music game that until the early 2000s mainly featured danceable music for clubs, typically focusing on romantic and sexual themes. All that pain, death, and violence quickly translated into the music, especially with the fast rise of the urban genres like reggaeton, giving birth to its gangster counterpart, Malianteo, with diss tracks being a very focal point. This was not only a way for artists to tap into a new and rapidly growing market in Puerto Rico's music industry by speaking about street affairs and even incorporating voice messages from local kingpins into their diss tracks.
Padre, déjatela caer, que usted está con nosotros. Atentamente la ONU, Pito Paz. Pito Paz.
But also a way for wealthy street businessmen to launder their illegal profits through a legitimate business, with some even founding their own record labels. A lot of underground, up-and-coming young artists in Puerto Rico started hopping on this trend, which would steadily consolidate itself as a dominant style within the reggaeton sphere. Artists like Tempo, Baby Rasta, Ñengo, Kendo Capone, Archangel, Mexicano 777, Don Omar, Tego Calderon, or Daddy Yankee, among many others, made their signature sound from and to the streets. This was especially true for one of the pioneers of this movement, Hector Luis Delgado Ramon, better known by his artistic street name, Hector El Father. In 2004, he transitioned from a duo career with Tito El Bambino, where the music was aimed primarily to the clubs and appealing to the female audience, turning into the embodiment of the genre itself. Hector was well respected and was one of the prime figures of the early steps of this movement. He was infamously backed up and also probably funded by none other than Angelo Miñones, aka El Buster, Pito Paz, and their ONU syndicate. He referred to them on countless occasions in music by many different names like the legendary Combo 70 or the Gang of 70, or they were also called the Disco Breakers.
Bling bling, esta es para el pana tuyo. Dile que Puerto Rico 100 por 35 y mandamos nosotros. Atentamente, la ONU. Oíste, y cuando rompo discoteca, vamos para la calle hoy.
En nuestra familia, las reglas son las reglas. Y el que la rompa pagará las consecuencias. Bostel, déjalo que se tire.
The Godfather.
Dile a tu gato que yo no corro con feca. Ando con el combo de los rompe discoteca. Ustedes no son capos y hasta me han llorado. Los papás que están.
Needless to say, having some of the most infamous names in the streets of Puerto Rico as basically his private security gave El Father a little bit of a god complex, often abusing his power to mess with artists' careers and dissing everyone. He also felt totally untouchable, having basically the equivalent of a small military company protecting him.
Porque tengo como dicen que soy un mafioso. Como yo no tienen, ya tú sabes, está celoso.
Padre, déjatela caer que usted está con nosotros. Atentamente la ONU, Pito Paz. Para Fadel, él sabe quién soy yo. En nuestra familia las reglas son las reglas y el que la rompa pagará las consecuencias.
Si lo vieran, como roncan y me tientan, pero se me embarran cuando vengan los 70.
This changed when some of the strongest allies and friends were either murdered or arrested and imprisoned over the years. All those years in the streets were catching up to Hector, and his ties with Angelo Miñones and the other bichotes, and also being accused of starting a shooting at one of his concerts. And it was at that moment when he decided to find God. In 2008, Hector El Father would retire, leaving behind his career as a reggaeton star, and he became an evangelic pastor, and he has been predicating the gospel ever since. His influence in Puerto Rico's urban music genre is undeniable, with tons of artists quoting, mentioning, and paying homage to El Father.
Cuando ustedes me ven, yo sé que tiemblan. Tú no me te cabras a la mambiche. Tú no me te cabras a la mambiche. Baby father como para los tiempos el Bostel.
Antes de los diablos estaban los menores. Y antes de los menores estaban los rompediscotecas.
Actually, he's indirectly responsible for one of the biggest changes in the music industry's monetization on digital platforms, due to one massive viral hit that, ironically, Hector never even made. I bet you that even if you've never heard of him before, you've heard his voice many, many times without even knowing it.
Con los terroristas. El terror con los terroristas.
That's right, that voice saying.
Con los terroristas.
That sampled at the beginning of one of the first viral sensations almost 13 years ago, the Harlem Shake, is Hector El Father. Maybe in the future we could do a deeper dive into La ONU and Hector El Father's story if you guys think it would be interesting. With the fall of ONU's higher ups, a huge power void would be created on the island, on the drug scene, a void that would quickly be filled by other organizations like Los Menores and Las FARC. The urban genre will only grow to new heights globally from here, and the connection between the music and streets would last and grow stronger to this day. During the early 2010s, complemented by the rise of Chicago drill, Malianteo would become a staple of Latin music, and endless artists would grow along with the genre. In a sense, Malianteo was drill rap before drill rap. They actually started talking, for example, about Glock switches way before their Chicago counterparts ever mentioned it.
Is right here. They actually keep this separated from the rest of the firearms. What did you call it? A chip. It's a chip, like a hack for your Glock. They put it right here, fits right in, and it makes this thing full auto, which is a felony.
Don't get no passes with your OG, it's still one of them. We got them glitches with the switches, this bitch stuttering.
And with the second coming of drill rap reaching new heights in popularity, a new wave of young Boricua artists would emerge, talking about their struggles in the streets and ready to take the genre by storm. One of these hungry young artists was Julian Enrique Ramos Carbia, better known by his rap name, Yaruza. Born August 8, 1998 in Bayamon, Puerto Rico, along with his twin brother Hector, who would end up being known as the producer Hydro. Both brothers grew up surrounded by the love of music and the harsh realities of the street. Their father was somewhat of an early buzz in that still premature reggaeton scene. Back in '96, Yaruza's father was artistically known as Bobby Jack, and he was part of the duo with the artist Chinito. They had a hit with the compilation album by DJ Chiclin, Los Más Buscados, or Most Wanted. Bobby and Chinito really had a buzz in that early reggaeton scene, and you can consider them even somewhat pioneers of the genre. In 1997, Chinito would get arrested in LA when he was trying to, quote, traffic some weed from the States back to Puerto Rico, when it's usually the other way around. With his arrest, the duo's career would be set on standby since Bobby refused to continue without his partner. But once Chinito was free and back on the island, their buzz was far gone, and the duo simply couldn't find that success again. So they just turned to the streets. In August 1998, Bobby Jack would welcome his twin children to this world, Hector and Julian. He would imbue in them his deep passion for music, which years down the road would definitely pay off. In 2007, the whole family moved to Florida. However, that same year, Bobby would be shot in his torso during a fight over a drug corner. The bullet hit one of his lungs, and Bobby was medicalized for over a month. Unfortunately, he wouldn't make it and died in the hospital at 27 years old. Now, a single mother had 3 children to take care of after such a tragic event. They would decide to move to Arizona, where the family would settle down. Here's where Hydro and Yaruza would take their first steps in the music themselves. Hydro would start making beats and Yaruza writing bars. The Puerto Rican sound their father had inculcated in them would get mixed with the American influences of trap and drill. It would be this particular sound that in 2017 would get Hydro's name some relevance as a producer in the Puerto Rican scene, getting signed by the Hear This Music Records, and would finally start getting production credits and songs with big artists like Bad Bunny, Anuel, Becky G, Tempo, and many others. Even though he could have used his brother as an easy way into the industry, Yaruza had a different plan. He was talented and had clear vision. When he returned to the island to pursue his rap career, he didn't have any real connections. Still, he was well respected in his father's native Levittown.
Soy Yaruza, estoy aquí apoyando a los brothercitos, ¿no? Activos. Nací en Santurce, me crié en Carolina. Puesto para la música también.
También tú estás metiendo.
Puesto para la música.
Ok, tú dices que tú conoces a alguien que yo conozco también.
Conozco mucha gente que tú conoces, pero no vamos a hablar de eso.
After uploading a few freestyles, he began to gain notoriety and eventually dropped his first official release, a remix of Bryant Myers' song, Nganga.
Por eso es que yo ando con mi ganga, traficando como pa' los tiempos de arca.
In his first drop, Yaruza had already established a clear brand that would continue during his whole career, with his Moneyway label and movement being mentioned since this first release. From here, Yaruza, along with his brother Hydro, would start building a company, Moneyway, signing new artists from around their area like Russell, Sayer, and collaborating in many songs like Negro with Russell.
Tú dices que no tienes miedo a morir, pues ven que la ca quiere darte un pasaje. Sí, bang, 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 bang.
Yaruza would go to jail for 3 months, where he would start repping G27, and the color red would always be present in his videos, even putting it as part of his Moneyway brand. It was then that, through mutual friends, Hydro would meet a young Puerto Rican rapper who was living in Florida on a basketball scholarship and who would end up being one of the biggest artists on the island. This rapper was none other than young Chimmy. Born in San Juan, Puerto Rico in 1996, Chimmy grew up between La Casa and Yarin Torres in Santurce. According to himself, Chimmy would start rapping at 17 years old, recording songs that he would never release, even though some of them would somehow get leaked years later. Chimmy, as I mentioned, received a scholarship to play basketball in California at 19, and it was there in Orange County where he met Yamal, a student from Chicago who would be his roommate and who was also a rapper himself and had a homemade studio where he would record. Chimmy started to take music more seriously and stopped pursuing basketball as much.
Yo me fui a jugar baloncesto para allá, becao.
¿Qué?
Te lo juro por Dios, jugar básquet, becao para California. Y la mierda fue que me salí. Pegué a joder. Me encontré California, ya tú sabes que la marihuana hay un meneo cabrón allá. Me involucré en esa vuelta. Me salí de la universidad y me quedé como 5 años por California. Me olvidé de Puerto Rico por el carajo. Esa esclavitud de estar entrenando y jugando básquet todo el tiempo, no estaba en esa, en verdad.
He allegedly recorded a couple songs fully in English, but it wasn't until 2019, after leaving Cali and going back to the island, when he was seeing opportunity in the bubbling Latin trap wave that had the island on lock. Yaruza and Chimmy met and instantly clicked. They would hang out in the studio and streets, and it was Yaruza's recently found success that would make Chimmy start uploading freestyle videos to Instagram. Yaruza would grow closer to Chimmy, and they would start hanging around the guys from Llorens Torres. Shortly after these freestyles started gaining some traction, Yaruza convinced Chimmy to actually go to the studio. There, they would record Bloody in 2020, even though the song wouldn't drop until years later. Yaruza's name was trending since he had already dropped 3 songs, with him being one of the very first artists to ride the drill wave that expanded worldwide after Pop Smoke's stellar rise, solidifying the sound in Puerto Rico. At this point, he was basically seen as the face of the new generation. Eventually, Chimmy would reconnect with an old childhood friend he used to play ball with, Davey, who, after seeing Chimmy's IG freestyles, would invite him to record in New York. You can see Chimmy in the background of Davey's first video. They would record an EP, Los Del Dribble. Up until this point, everything looked amazing for the whole Moneyway music side of things. They were ready to take the Latin music world by storm. But on November 19, 2020, everything would change when, in a dramatic turn of events, on the same basketball court in Levittown where Bobby Jack once met Chinito back in the day, Yaruza would die after being shot. Yaruza was killed in an incident reported around 9:14 p.m. on Thursday 19th, 2020 at the basketball court located in Calle Cinco in El Naranjal housing complex in Levittown, according to police. Authorities found the body of 22-year-old Yaruza at the scene after receiving a 911 call reporting gunshots.
Las autoridades reportaron un tiroteo anoche en Levittown donde un hombre falleció y otro resultó herido. Al momento se desconoce la identidad de las víctimas. La policía se encuentra investigando los hechos para dar con el móvil de este incidente.
The circumstances around Yaruza's death are still kind of unclear, and the murder was never solved as far as I could find. But word on the street is that Yaruza was trying to bust a trap and it went wrong, and the situation escalated to fatal heights. Also, the people who did it allegedly met a similar fate shortly after. There are just rumors, however, but I felt like I had to mention. The internet's reaction to the news of Yaruza's passing was instantaneous, with tons of friends, family, and fans sending condolences and showing their respects to who would be considered by many the face of PR drill from now on. 2 weeks after Yaruza's death, all his fellow Moneyway artists and friends like Sahir, Jonah, Palermo, Russell, KK, Davey, and Chimmy would collaborate in the tribute song Rest in Peace Yaruza. All the verses pay homage to Yaruza's vision and show love to their fallen friend.
Morigüey, la ruta el dinero. Arriba el pulgar y pañuelo rojo, que Dios te reciba, le imploro.
Todos para arriba, pañuelo rojo y estamos de luto. Colan los diablos de rojo y esos cabrones van a quedarse brutos.
Pues yo le canto al que vive porque muerto no me va a escuchar. Por un error ellos pagaron y tú no quieres morir igual. Ya te lo dije, probo Villaca. Yo le canto al que vive porque muerto no me va a escuchar. Por un error ellos pagaron y tú no quieres morir igual. Ya te lo dije, probo Villaca.
This was Chimmy's first appearance in an official release. In his verse, he reflects on the news and promises to continue Yaruza's legacy and the Moneyway movement, making it global.
Ya ni escucho Bloody, me dan ganas de llorar, pero confía el video como quiera lo vamos a sacar y vamos a coronar. Acá abajo te voy a recordar, vas a ser mundial, con tu música te lo van a mamar. Del money tenemos la ruta, el bro nos dejó la batuta.
Spoiler, Chimmy actually kept this promise. Chimmy would get even closer to Hydro, and they started working hard to make sure Yaruza's legacy would live on. His death was a pivotal moment for Chimmy's career, and it would be in February of 2021 when Chimmy would finally make his solo debut with the song Glizzy Walk, which currently sits at 3.2 million views, and it was a hit. This track would set the expectations for Chimmy, talking about drugs, guns, and crime over an Atlanta trap type beat.
Te damos los tiros a suerga, así en el Lambo Mario Kart, un BBN en swipe de card. Por eso con los míos soy bien discreto, todo lo que pasa se queda en secreto, y si como yo, como el coro completo.
But this wasn't really what Chimmy's sound would end up like at all, to be honest. But his second song, Blizzy, though, is a lot more style defining for Chimmy. This was yet another Hydro beat, this time a New York drill beat. He's a lot more braggadocious and talks about Satorce's streets And this is also the first time we hear Chimmy really speak about being around bosses, trafficking kilos, and murder. He mentions Lo del Dribble and Moneyway, and more importantly, his caserío, Llorens Torres, and the gang that would eventually define his career, Los Diablos.
Fronteira y sacamos las glissy, o en el norte con las blicky. Ganshi boy, relacionado con los diablos, cabrón, pregunta dónde soy. Hablando de cata con los mexicanos, hablando de kilos sentado con los domis. Si no es por bote por el océano, un túnel de tierra como bombones.
His third drop, ATL, would be a show of versatility on Chimmy's end. With an old school reggaeton beat, also produced by Hydro, the song was well received by fans, and Chimmy started gaining some real hype around his name.
En la disco con los que mandan, en el VIP dólares gang gang, más estado que los de Atlanta. De Lloren hasta Playita, las casi las margaritas, los canales, las motoritas, las glop y las ermitas, el trio 5, con Moneyway con los del Dri, el ambiente está pesado, en el VIP todo el mundo armado.
A lot of people started looking at the young artists from Llorens as the next prospect. And to understand what would come after this, I think first we need to learn a bit about the Residencial Luis Llorens Torres. Built in the 1950s in the Santurce neighborhood in San Juan, the public housing complex, Llorens Torres is the biggest caserío in Puerto Rico with 2,600 apartments distributed and 140 towers with an estimated 7,000 to 8,000 inhabitants. But some sources like Univision give population numbers of up to 25,000 people. After its initial inauguration in 1953, Llorens Torres rapidly became a site of concentrated poverty and structural inequality, representing the result of over a century of exploitative U.S. housing and economic policies carried out at the island's expense. Despite dangerously failing infrastructure, frequent flooding, and severe damage from Hurricane Maria in 2017, the neighborhood remains home to vibrant, tight-knit communities that continue to adapt and to overcome these structural and socio-economic challenges. And of course, with both the municipal and federal government's poor handling of the situation, the projects became a hotspot for drug dealing. During the late 90s and early 2000s, while Hector El Father was still on his wild run in the industry, the boss, or Bachete in Llorens, Luis Rodriguez Isaac, better known as Chacal, would be part of the ONU organization and act as Hector's private security with El Campo del 70. The alleged owner of several stash houses had his headquarters in Calle 4/4th Street and was said to have a firm grip on the project, allegedly controlling 80% of the market and making millions. Over the years, Chacal would get arrested for several charges ranging from gun possession to murder and would be immersed in several turf wars. Chacal's Calle 4 gang would allegedly be responsible for over 25 murders in this war and other unrelated conflicts. The consequences of this lifestyle would finally catch up to Chacal in February of 2010 when he would die in a triple homicide shooting in front of a bar in Isla Verde.
La matanza de 3 individuos vinculados al narcotráfico se dio a plena luz del día en la marginal Villamar cuando desconocidos presuntamente le bloquearon el paso al vehículo donde se transportaban las víctimas, iniciando la balacera. Entre los occisos se identificó al presunto dueño de uno de los puntos de drogas en el residencial Luis Llorens Torres.
En esta escena hay 2 personas muertas. Uno de ellos, Luis Rodríguez, conocido como el Chacal, que era el dueño del punto de droga de Calle 4, el Llorens Torres, una persona que había sido arrestada y estuvo presa federalmente.
El sábado, la guerra por el control del narcotráfico y lo que parece ser una venganza por una muerte ocurrida hace un tiempo revivió en el residencial Llorens Torres de San Juan, cuando a Luis Rodríguez Isaac, de 29 años, apodado El Chacal, un ex guardaespaldas de reggaetonero El Father y alegadamente quien mantenía control de los puntos del sector del caserío conocido como la Calle 4, cayó muerto ante una lluvia de disparos lanzados desde una van que le interceptó y de donde se bajaron 4 individuos enmascarados con armas largas. Murieron en el hospital sus acompañantes Carlos Rubén Morales, Encarnación, de 26 años, su papá de 45, y resultó herido Christopher Cruz, de 26, apodado Tuti, quien se mantiene estable en centro médico. Se supo que la policía, que llegó rápido al lugar, evitó que sicarios se llevaran los cuerpos.
Chacal's death definitely heated up the streets in Llorens, and his funeral was huge and had a massive police presence, even closing part of a highway for the funeral procession.
Policías estatales y municipales de la capital escoltaban la comitiva fúnebre por tierra y aire, comitiva que salió hacia la Valdoriotti de Castro evitando pasar por donde opera el grupo de los 21 y las Malvinas, con los que los occisos tenían. Valdoriotti de Castro, por donde serían transportados los féretros, fue cerrada al tránsito hasta la salida al túnel Minillas. Los vehículos pasaron a toda prisa por los elevados, pues es en esa parte del residencial donde operan las organizaciones rivales. La importante vía estuvo cerrada por unos 15 minutos. La comitiva llegó al cementerio municipal de San Juan al mediodía.
After Chacal's fall, with Calle Cuatro's main players out of the picture, Calle 20 quickly grew in numbers and control of Llorens, with Rafael aka Chio Barita being one of the most feared and infamous faces in this gang. He was friends with legendary artist Kendo Capone, and would appear in songs showing his backing for the rapper. Under Cheo Beretta's leadership, Calle 20 would be a part of the powerful and feared nationwide drug syndicate known as Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Cantera, or short for Las FARC, even though its power would extend across the whole island and even internationally. Unlike La ONU's consensus-based structure trying to protect each other against the government and authorities, Las FARC was formed by several independent local factions that controlled different areas of the island, without a head leadership, but rather territorial bosses. Different parts of the gang are in a constant power struggle amongst each other for control of the trafficking routes. Originally formed in 2006, Las FARC adopted the motto La Familia Nunca Muere, or The Family Never Dies, which they use in music and chains, amongst other places. Mentioned and referenced by endless artists through the genre's history, Las FARC is still one of the most powerful groups in the whole Caribbean to this day.
¿Te acuerdas los de la FARC? Te mandan saludos a ti también. Dicen que estás loco de verte. Ando con un full como el oriental de la FARC.
El gobierno me quitó el caserío, pero nos expandimos. Atentamente la FARC, Bayamón.
La familia no muere la FARC y no te tengo que roncar.
Par de cabrones que me quieren dar, pero guerrear conmigo es guerrear con la FARC.
Es la familia nunca muere, ¿oíste? Ya. Somos muchos y eso les duele, que la familia jamás se muere.
The gang is most known for its violence, and according to the FBI, they're involved in at least 50 murders since 2006. Rumors and legends abound. One story says they would leave their victims' corpse in hidden areas in Laguna de San Jose, where alligators or caimanes would dispose of the bodies, but this has never been confirmed.
Empezamos a investigar a esta ganga violenta. Nos llamó la atención que cogían a sus víctimas y los cuerpos, cuando los mataban, se los tiraban a los caimanes. De hecho, este caso primero se llamaba Operación Cocodrilo. Ahí están viendo la violencia de esta peligrosa ganga.
Internal disputes were a key sticking point for the group. There was one in November of 2015 that would lead to Cheo Beretta's death in a shooting incident on the streets of Santurce. This was allegedly one of those inner divisions within Las FARC, led by Vladimir Natera Abreu, which ended up taking control over Llorens Torres. Ever since 2015, Las FARC has been in control of the housing complex. Vladimir had been living in the Dominican Republic since 2018, evading capture. Dominican authorities, acting on an arrest warrant, tracked him for several days before arresting him along with his lieutenant, Josette Rivera Verdejo. His capture was challenging due to his slippery nature, frequent changes in appearance, and movement through wealthy neighborhoods in Santo Domingo. Authorities believed he was not running things from the Dominican Republic, but sometimes conducted operations from there.
Era alrededor del mediodía de este domingo cuando fiscales y agentes adscritos a la DNCD se presentaron a la Torre Roma 20 del exclusivo sector Evaristo Morales. SIN están identificadas como Joseph Omar Rivera Verdejo y Vladimir Natera Abreu.
He is also suspected of a hit on infamous third in command of Las FARC, Carlos, aka Tonka, in 2017, and artist Kevin Fret in 2019. Also, influencer Isadora Pinky Curvy, who was 24, was shot dead in Hato Rey, Puerto Rico while leaving a restaurant. She had been indicted in 2019 for alleged ties to Las FARC.
En las imágenes grabadas con una cámara de vigilancia se ve un auto rojo persiguiendo la camioneta Tacoma, donde viajaba la influencer junto a su actual pareja. En medio de la ráfaga de balas se ve al chofer correr y entrar a un negocio para pedir ayuda. El vehículo recibió más de 80 impactos de bala que terminaron con la vida de Pinky Curry. Ella no sobrevivió al ataque armado de presuntos sicarios. La vida de alias Pinky Curry no estuvo libre de controversias. Según informes de la policía, detrás de su vida en redes se escondía un historial criminal. En febrero de 2019 se entregó al FBI y fue enjuiciada bajo acusaciones de narcotráfico junto a 75 personas más, pertenecientes a la pandilla de narcotraficantes conocida como Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Cantera. El auto de los criminales fue hallado con orificios de bala también. La policía aclaró que Rivera Pérez, pareja de la influencer, no tenía récord criminal y se encuentra recuperándose en un hospital bajo la protección de la policía. Según él, los sicarios habrían querido rematarlo en el centro médico.
Yarens Torres would fall under the Caguas area of control. Carlos Miguel Cotto Cruz, aka Oasa, who was facing multiple charges including drugs, guns, and even domestic violence. In addition, he had 2 arrest warrants for murder. He would be arrested in Orcovis in a joint effort by Puerto Rican police and the FBI on May 7, 2021.
Desde 2018 estaba fugitivo de las autoridades, tiene 2 órdenes de asesinato. 20 de enero de 2021, sobre el asesinato ocurrido en el pueblo de San Lorenzo. Tentativa de asesinato y ley de armas para ese tiempo. En adición, tenía orden de arresto, una revocación de probatoria federal. Era buscado por las autoridades. Sumamente peligroso. Este individuo es líder de una organización criminal en Caguas y tiene también ramificaciones en el área de Cantera, en Atorrey. Hoy el trabajo, al intervenir con este individuo, se ocuparon 2 kilos de heroína, 10 kilos de cocaína, 6 libras de marihuana, 10 cargadores de pistola, 2 cargadores de rifle, una pistola Glock alterada para disparar y alrededor de 1,000 municiones de rifle.
And it was here with the fall of Wasa when his 2 lieutenants, Gordo Casco and Luis Daniel Garcia Hernandez, aka Elede or Enano, would step up. Elede, also known as Megatron, would be a key figure for the career of the latest, most promising artist from the Caserío, Yarens Torres. He would back up Chimmy's career and would eventually be his manager. Chimmy would start flexing his connection with Elede's small set within Las FARC, Los Diablos, and songs, but didn't commit to fully embrace Los Diablos as his own brand at first, at least not yet. On August 20th, 2021, Moneyway would roll out Yaruza's posthumous album, La Ruta del Dinero, Moneyway, a highly anticipated release by the fans. The album has a ton of Moneyway features, but his feature with Young Chimmy, called Bloody Remix, was his first song with Yaruza and a standout.
Tráigame la soda y el baking, and I'ma whip that bitch, él está vendiendo más que Wish.
It would also include the song La Cara del Drill, The Face of Drill, a song that would further solidify him as one of the pioneers of the genre. But the day before the single came out, veteran PR rapper Tempo would drop the song El Rey del Drill, which was a pretty obvious shot at the late Yaruza and the whole Moneyway movement, especially if we consider that, as we mentioned earlier, Tempo and Hydro had worked together in the past. So he was more than likely well aware of the situation with Hydro's twin brother, Yaruza. Chimmy didn't take kindly to the disrespect that the title and timing posed for his dead friend's legacy, and it would only be 3 weeks later when, on September 14th, he would respond to Tempo and defend Yaruza in Drill's Elder, dissing Tempo, addressing the situation, and asserting Yaruza's place as the real face of drill in Puerto Rico. He would also mention a very specific slogan and group for the very first time, making it obvious his street affiliations were rapidly growing. The diss song from this up-and-coming artist towards a staple name of the genre went viral, and it would mark the beginning of Young Chimmy's run to stardom. And as he promised to Yaruza on his tribute song, this rise would be quicker than anyone could have expected. Elede would really start backing Chimmy's career, since he recognized this as a good opportunity to get into some clean legal dollars, and Chimmy would return the favor, showing more and more support for his friend's street gang. In October of 2021, Chimmy would drop Glizzy Walk 2.0, and this would set the tone for what would be Young Chimmy's persona all throughout the rest of his career. We see Chimmy posted in Llorens with his guys and a lot of bikes behind him. We also finally hear him personally claim Los Diablos de Llorens.
En Lloren soy como los baby en Atlanta. A ti no te creen nada de lo que cantas. Las moli te borramos el rostro. Bien.
Entraron al residencial Luis Llorens Torres, aunque no eran bienvenidos.
Dólares en Santurce Lloren, los diablos con la clopa encima. Doble L, 140 Tower, los diablos. Doble Lloren, que puta, los diablos de la metro. ¿Qué?
Chimmy's career would take off from here, and that's when he, along with his powerful new manager, Megatron, would found their own independent record labels, Glizzy Gang and 140 Towers, named in honor of the 140 towers that make up the housing projects. They would set up recording studios in the heart of the Caseríos, which they would baptize as the Bunker. The Bunker was made to appear to be a bar.
Pero aquí es donde graba John Chimmy. El búnker. La familia nunca muere.
Ese es el eslogan de ellos. 140 Tower es el sello como tal. Ese es el sello creado por LD.
And with Chimmy's next release in February 2022, Baby Father, we would see Chimmy's transformation complete and history go full circle. Over this Detroit beat, produced by Hydro, Young Chimmy would totally embrace Los Diablos de Llorens, showing off big racks, Lamborghinis, riding ATVs with the gang around the housing project, and famously declaring himself the baby father, comparing him to the way Hector was moving like a boss on the island almost 20 years ago, and even mentions the infamous drug pen and leader of the ONU, Angelo Meñones, aka El Buster.
El baby father como para los tiempos el Buster. La gang en el club. Los diablos lloren, security ni chequeó. Les quiero ver la cara cuando traigo un Lambo a calle 4 y celebremos con Buchanan y los Dracos en el bando. Vamos a limpiar los chavos cantando en el buff y todas las putas están llamando. No, en el bunker facturo con el enano.
And to be fair to him, we can all agree we were starting to see some parallels already. And we could also see Eladio Carrion, a prominent name in the genre and friend of Hydro, seen in this video, foreshadowing a future remix of this song, which would forever change Chimmy's life. But we are getting a little ahead of ourselves. The song went absolutely crazy, and Young Chimmy was already becoming a well-known name in the Latin music world, with his combo Los Diablos de Llorens becoming somewhat of a viral sensation. The next few releases would solidify Chimmy's image by appearing with LED in music videos and starting to wear LFNM/Las FARC chains. On March 26th, during a police raid in Llorens Torres, 5 people were arrested, including a 15-year-old minor at the bar/recording studio. Officers seized 11 guns, over 600 rounds of ammunition, more than $7,000 in cash, drugs, 2 cars, and 2 motorcycles. Hydro escaped charges this time. They would later continue using the studio or El Bunker regardless. It would be on April 4th, 2022, when Chimmy would drop the remix Glizzy Walk 2.5 with Eladio Carrion. This music video would be recorded in NYC, and it was there where he would link up with one of the future members of Los Diablos, Slater. From here, Chimmy would finally be seen as the hottest new artist in the genre, even getting to remix his other hit song, Baby Father, with legends of the movement like Ñengo Flow, who came up with Hector himself, and Archangel, who infamously was slapped by Hector El Father back in the early 2000s, and apparently still held the grudge against the now long retired rapper turned evangelist pastor. He since changed his lyric and even the hook to remove any references to El Father from his whole verse, switching it up to Baby Arca instead.
En el Hellcat te prendemos el helicóptero. El baby alca como para los tiempos el Buster.
Chimmy was nothing short of an international star at this point, and his name was getting hotter and hotter. The success that him, Hydro, and the late Yaruza were searching for all these years was finally at their fingertips. And obviously, as it always is the case with these stories from the streets, this is when everything would go south. On May 17, 2022, a federal grand jury in Puerto Rico indicted 41 gang members from San Juan for drugs, guns, and conspiracy charges. The FBI, Puerto Rican police, DEA, ICE, and the U.S. Marshals collaborated for this major drug bust in different housing projects. Authorities said the group sold kilos to the U.S. mainland. The group used Airbnb rentals and abandoned apartments to store drugs, money, and weapons, using violence as a main tactic to maintain control. Among those charged were Gordo Casco and LD. According to police reports, during the investigation, members of Los Diablos received drug shipments transported by boats arriving from Venezuela and the Dominican Republic. if convicted on the drug charges, could be sentenced from 10 years to life. If convicted of both the drug and firearm charges, the people arrested face 15 years up to life in prison. It's presumed that they were forced to forfeit over $58 million. Elide would be mentioned on many occasions by Chimmy and them, appearing in a jail video call, audio recordings, and by gifting Chimmy the Megatron chain. The imagery of Los Diablos continued taking shape. Chimmy even dropped a song called Megatron, using one of the phone calls with his incarcerated boss as the intro. It's also worth mentioning, Elide would also drop a few songs himself, bragging about his status and activity in the streets.
Tengo mucha gente en contra, pero saben que tengo power, nadie me ronca. Me creo presidente porque salgo con la corta.
With the boss, Elide, now incarcerated in federal prison, it would be Christopher Pabon, or El Chef, who would command the Caserío. It would be via El Chef that Los Diablos got their ties to Philly. Chimmy would continue to have an amazing 2022 and beginning of 2023 in music, where he would collaborate with some of the biggest names in the game, like Ñengo Flow, Luar Lael, and even being the first Boricua artist to produce a Gangsta Grillz mixtape along with legendary DJ Drama. On this mixtape, we can find Chimmy's first song with an up-and-coming Puerto Rican artist who, even though would be friendly with Chimmy for years, would eventually turn into the face of the other side of the war, Hades 6'6". At this point, it's fair to say that Chimmy was at the top of the Latin drill/trap music industry. He'd get features with the biggest names in the game, like Archangel and Bad Bunny. He was doing interviews with every outlet, and his name was guaranteed clicks. It was at this point where Chimmy would meet some of the new artists and producers that would shortly click up and become tightly affiliated to, if not part of, Los Diablos. Amongst other young rappers from the Sabana, Abajo, Caserío, and Catalina, Cidobleta, also known as El Diablo Blanco or the White Devil, who had risen to local celebrity for uploading IG Reels, popping willies with his bars used as background music. He started taking his craft more seriously in 2023 and started dropping solo songs that rapidly gained him a reputation amongst the island's new school artists.
Tan cagao, tengo un rifle nuevo que ni lo he tocado. Los fraternos son los peines que tengo tepeado.
Chimmy and Cidobleta would become very close, and in October 2023, they would drop KDP, a song that would propel both artists' careers even further.
Kilos de perico, los compramos en San Tomás, los metimos en Puerto Rico. Los compramos en RD y en San Tomás, saca el palo, doblete pa' que tú veas, no se asoman.
Slater, real name John Williams Santana Garcia, was born in Puerto Rico. His father was killed when he was just 1 year old, and his then 17-year-old mom moved to New York City. Slater was already trying his luck as an artist, but would mainly rap in English. He has a couple songs featuring somewhat known artists in the United States rap game like Sada Baby and Young Ace, but more notoriously, he was in a 2021 song with two New York drill staples, 26 AR and K Flock, in the heights of the Bronx drill wave.
Keep a 4-5 on me, I ain't fighting. Back then I was terrorizing indictment. All I do is get high and dodge indictments. So my brothers stay smart, not dangerous. Cause the dangerous nigga get whacked, and the dangerous nigga might lack.
EBK, DOA, GBG babies. We told choppers like this shit to Navy.
All my niggas scammers, all they robbers. Pull out the 30, give me $1. I'll take your wifey, put her in Prada. Pop the perky on my way to get some lean in Jersey. She gave me head for like 10 minutes, then I fuck for 30.
In August of that year, he would drop Zombies, a music video recorded in Philly where we can see Pressure and his brother, Panza. At around the same time, in that same small street called Weymouth in the Kensington neighborhood in Philadelphia, two young artists would emerge out of nowhere and be added to the roster. Obviously, I'm talking about Sombra and Pressure, who had both just dropped their respective debut songs, Pantrocito and VVS Switch, that would quickly make the Philly duo a strong name. The circumstances around how these two came up, especially Pressure, were shady to some. Accusations of botted views flew, with VVS Switch being his first song that immediately went viral and received millions of views, sitting at over 70 million views at the moment of this recording. The fact is that Pressure was already wearing the Megatron chain, and mentioning Los Diablos in his first ever music video was noteworthy. It's also worth mentioning that El Chef Pressure's manager is from Llorens Torres. He actually got shot in April 2023 with an intense shootout that left 3 young people injured near the Luis Llorens Torres projects.
Una posible venganza, ese es uno de los ángulos que investiga la policía sobre la balacera ocurrida anoche en el residencial Luis Llorens Torres, acá en la zona metropolitana, y que dejó el saldo de 3 personas heridas, una de ellas de gravedad. Estas víctimas han sido identificadas hasta el momento como Jirel Santiago Colón, de 19 años, Christopher Pavón Pietri, de 21, y Christopher Cruz Carrasquillo, de 23 años. Según la policía, testigos aseguran que vieron a varios sujetos llegar al lugar en distintos autos y comenzaron a abrir fuego contra un grupo de personas. En la escena se ocuparon múltiples casquillos de bala de distintos calibres, así como un cargador.
This connection, Puerto Rico to Philly, would go on to call themselves Los Diablos de la W and would be key in the upcoming wars Los Diablos would find themselves in, both on the island and in the United States. All of these artists, along with producers like Gecko, would sign to Glizzy Gang, Chimmy's personal label, and would form a really dangerous group both in and outside the music game. It's worth mentioning that, like Yoruza and Megatron before them, most of these artists, including Chimmy, also claimed the prison gang, G27, and would reference it constantly in their music.
Glizzy Walk, los tiro en la garganta. El RRO 27 como Santa.
Rojo 27 me canto si caigo preso, ey, ey.
Ay, el bitch and disrespectful. Tengo un intrate full. Siempre de rojo 27 como Deadpool.
Cidobleta is the only exception in Los Diablos, identifying himself as Nieta instead. In August 2023, Moneyway would release Yoruza's second posthumous studio album titled Coda. It was accompanied by a promotional trailer that featured probably the only wholesome moment in this whole documentary, where we can see Yoruza's son, who lost his dad when he was just a baby, being held by his uncle Hydro, while a nice marble bust of Yoruza is revealed. This would also be featured on the album's cover art, where we can see Baby Euro softly strokes his dad's face again. However, the wholesome times wouldn't last long, as on October 31st, 2023, Cidobleta, one of the recent additions to Los Diablos lineup, would get arrested along with 3 other young men during a raid at the Cafe Claro nightclub in Santurce. Following a search warrant for a Cherokee SUV, authorities seized 2 9mm guns modified with switches, as well as magazines, ammunition, and a pig mask. They refused to talk, but signed something allowing the feds to check their phone's content. And the feds got pictures and messages, including pictures of guns that would later be related to a cop's murder. This decision would come back to bite the whole gang in the ass. Chimmy would allegedly take care of all lawyer expenses for this case, and Cidobleta would be put on probation wearing an ankle monitor, which infamously ran out of battery on this podcast.
Si no fuera así, ellos estuvieran pegados. El grillete. Sonó.
Los diablos.
El grillete,
en poca, puñeta.
El primer grillete que suena en un podcast.
At this point, Los Diablos were in a pretty good spot in their careers, frequently collaborating with big names in the industry. Chimmy was doing interview after interview, and he infamously got carried away in one of them in December of 2023, going extra fed for absolutely no reason.
Siempre cuentan en sus historias cómo ellos se dejaron dominar de la calle o cómo ellos estaban dentro de la calle y a pesar de estar en la calle, hacían su música, su maleanteo y tenían problemas. A fulano le mataron que sé yo cuánto desde el combo de él, a fulano. Y siempre veíamos esa historia de que la calle estaba metida en la música. Tú que eres parte del presente, yo quiero saber si todavía esa realidad existe aquí en Puerto Rico, si todavía la calle está dentro de lo que es la industria.
¿Verdad que sí? Porque detrás del artista están la gente que está invirtiendo, están la gente que creyó en el artista y que son de la calle, sus chavos son de la calle, son un quilero, un narco, un esto, un lo otro. Y, ¿sabes? Si tú tienes algún tipo de situación con ese artista, la estás teniendo con el hombre de la calle, ¿me entiendes? Pero si tú te pones a pensar, De La Ghettos estuvo con gente de la calle, Arcángel también. Anuel también, Ozuna también. Pues la real es que los bichotes son los que pagan todo. Que a los bichotes le ponen las motoras, las cadenas, los carros, todas esas cosas, ¿me entiendes? Que no todo a veces como tú piensas, ¿me entiendes? Y hay gente detrás que son de la calle.
With young Chimmy leading the way and the viral growth that every artist around him was experiencing, CTVPhilly went back home and everything was looking bright for Los Diablos. But you see, back in Philadelphia, things between Weymouth and their close allies, YO, and the guys from 7th and Russell were heating up. We have a whole 45-minute long video explaining the conflicts between these two groups in Philly. Hade 66 is an artist from Morovis, Puerto Rico, who goes back and forth from the island to Milwaukee and claims Los Popos or Seis. Hades started his career uploading freestyles to the page Freestyle Mania, where he quickly gained popularity and eventually would transition into a full-on music career where he soon found success. This other collective, Los Popos, includes rappers like Slick La Mina, who lives in Milwaukee, Black Any from Caguas, Puerto Rico, and Anubis, who was also friends with Hades from the beginning of his career. They all go by Los Popos, Seis, La M, or La Siete Records. It's rumored that a powerful drug kingpin from Milwaukee is the one funding this side, but we will dive deeply into Los Popos in a dedicated video. Slick, Black Any, and the rest are connected to the 7th and Russell block in Philly, while Sombra and Pressure are linked up with their ops, YO. Chimmy and Hades would continue dropping music together and basically excluding themselves from the conflict. That fragile equilibrium would soon be broken. At the beginning, things seemed fine between both groups. They would frequently feature in each other's songs. We could see Chimmy, Hades, and Slick Lamina together in this music video for the remix of Bloody with Yaruza. It was in one of these features, the remix to Ooh by ROA and Hades. That would include new verses by Luar Lael and CTVPhilly. Allegedly, after catching up to the news about the conflict back in Philly, Hades 66 would take CTVPhilly off the song. CTVPhilly would respond on Instagram, and so there it goes. Los Diablos and Los Popos would finally start going at each other. 2 weeks later, the remix of Trap Phone, a track by Anubis featuring Casper, Wanka, Slick La Mina, and CTVPhilly was set to be released. As you can see, there's a problem here. CTVPhilly would go on to be removed from this song, even though he appeared in the official music video. It was taken down just a few hours after its release and then re-released without the appearance of the Diablo. After the multiple back and forths on the internet over the CTVPhilly verses being cut, and with the streets hot back in Kensington on January 11th, 2024 at an album release party in Puerto Rico, Slick La Mina from Los Popos would run into Midnight and Dime West, two artists under the Moneyway umbrella, and they jumped them. At this moment, Chimmy and Hades were still collaborating, but 2024 would be the year when a war, both in music and in the streets, would explode openly between Los Diablos and Los Popos. In March of 2024, Pressure would drop VVS Switch Remix with huge names in the industry like Anuel, Noir, CTVPhilly, and initially Hades 66. However, after allegedly Hades' label would strike the video of his collab with Slater and also Hades' verse on VVS Switch Remix, the song would then be re-uploaded without Hades. CTVPhilly's case would get lost in the inefficiency of the court system. So now, on March 28, 2024, his ankle monitor would be removed, still waiting for his preliminary hearing.
Los poli me picaron el grillete.
But that wouldn't last, since only 2 days after getting his ankle monitor removed, on March 29, 2024, Puerto Rico police officer Eliezer Ramos Velez, who was off duty but still wearing his uniform and vest, was fatally shot after following a group of armed men that were in a car firing at a motorist. The officer was found dead in his vehicle, and his service weapon and radio were stolen. Allegedly, the perpetrators also tried to take off his vest, but were unable to. Ramos Velez was a 12-year veteran of the Puerto Rico Police Department, admired for his dedication, and had been named Officer of the Year 3 times. He left behind a young son.
Poco después del mediodía del Viernes Santo, las autoridades comenzaron a entrevistar a ciudadanos que podrían tener información o estar relacionados con el asesinato del policía Eliezer Ramos Vélez, adscrito a la División de Detección de Disparos.
El mensaje a estas personas es: no me los maten, entréguennos, no nos vamos del residencial hasta que no nos entreguen.
The response of the authorities to the murder of the police officer took no time. The feds reopened Citobleta's gun case and would get an arrest warrant for him and 3 other men. The arrest was allegedly due to the October 2023 gun charge that was left on standby, but they were just gaining some time to build up a case for the police officer's murder. On April 1st, 2024, Citobleta would turn himself in to the federal and state authorities, and he would be sent to jail. According to those authorities, even though not charged for the officer's murder yet, Citobleta's arrest was fundamental for the investigation.
Contra el joven de 21 años ya pesaba una orden de arresto federal por posesión de un arma alterada para disparar de manera automática. Además, figura como persona de interés en el asesinato del policía Eliezer Ramos Vélez el pasado viernes en el residencial Sabana Bajo.
Caso específico del cantante, ¿verdad? Trapero que se llama Citobleta, porque era una persona de interés. ¿Él está vinculado o no está vinculado?
No, es una persona de interés en el caso del asesinato del sargento Eliezer Ramos.
This was pretty much all the information we got from the authorities, but after a little digging, we found out that Citobleta's case is way deeper than it seemed, being part of a 56-person federal indictment with charges that range from distribution of kilos, allegedly amounting to up to $31 million, and to at least 3 murders, including Officer Ramez Velez and 2 teenage girls. If found guilty, he could face up to life in prison and even the death penalty, depending on the charges. Citobleta's case gets very deep, so if that's something you want to see, let us know in the comments. On May 2024, Chimmy and Hades would collaborate for the last time on producer Yeko's The Big Boss of Beats mixtape and even record a video for the song Murder City. But more infamously, on that same mixtape, Sombra would directly attack Hades for the first time in the song Problematical.
Estoy buscando a Jade por Tocagua, está asustado. ¿Dónde están? ¿Dónde están? Estoy loco, secuestrado un cantante. Entramos pa' Morovi, parle fuletazo con la 40, pa' que tiren puya en las stories.
He would explain why weeks later on the podcast.
¿Qué pasó con Jade y tú que tuvieron ese de esto por lo de Citobleta? ¿O fue por otra cosa?
Está eso y también que chamaquito en verdad, tú sabes, como si ahora mismo yo hago una loquera, tú sabes que Chimi va a venir y me va a decir, baby, bájale. Pues tú sabes que él tiene su escuadrón, ¿verdad? Él no controla los de él. Y para tirarle un triple, mejor le damos el tronco para que se caigan las hojas, ¿no?
Pressure would go on to diss Hades on stage in one of his shows. And Hades would respond by changing his Instagram profile picture to a picture of the Optimus Prime killing Megatron, a clear statement against Los Diablos, who, after their now incarcerated boss, LD, would identify with this name, calling themselves Los Decepticons, rocking Megatron chains, etc. In July 2024, both Los Diablos and Los Popos went to Primos Juventud, an annual award show organized by Univision that honors Hispanic entertainers, including actors, musicians, influencers. There, they ran into each other, but even after all the back and forth on social media, nothing really happened. On August 24th, 2024, however, at artist Neo Garcia's album release party, Chimmy and other members of Los Diablos got into a brawl with Black Any, Slick La Mina, and their people, along with some Los Popos fans, allegedly. The footage is so low res that it's difficult to actually make anything out from the fight, but this would be when Slater would infamously bail out, leaving his friends alone, which was caught on camera. He will be mocked for this to this day. Popo's members would upload tons of Instagram stories showing their trophies and bragging about the aftermath. You can see what allegedly are El Chef sneakers and dreads and Pressure's Cartier watch, which allegedly was worth $380,000. On August 30th, Chimmy and Citobleta will release VVS for Life. In the video's intro, we could see Chef, the now Bachete of Lorenz Torres, and Pressure's manager using one of the katanas from Chimmy's chain to stab an octopus, a clear reference to Los Popos and an indication that the war had just begun. Soon after, Hades would upload a preview of Sombra and Chimmy's diss, but it would never be uploaded officially, even though the leaked version would go viral. It was only a matter of time before the two faces of the group would go against each other, fully embracing the war that had been bubbling for months. Just a few days later, on September 11th, Slater would be arrested, accused of Medicare fraud in New York for allegedly posing as a doctor and issuing fake prescriptions. Slater was detained at Luis Muñoz Marin Airport in Carolina while preparing to travel to the Dominican Republic to shoot a music video. He would bail out shortly after.
Las autoridades detuvieron esta tarde a un hombre acusado en el estado de Nueva York de fraude al Medicare. Esto por presuntamente hacerse pasar por médico y hacer recetas falsas. John Williams Santana García fue detenido en el aeropuerto Luis Muñoz Marín de Carolina mientras se disponía a viajar a República Dominicana para la grabación de un video musical.
The waters would calm down for a little, even though they would continue beefing on Instagram. Finally, after a Chimmy verse dissing Hades would leak on Instagram, Hades would dare Chimmy to drop a diss track. And that's how a few days later, on October 15th, 2024, Young Chimmy would drop Real Demon, a 6-minute long song with 2 different beats produced by Yeko. The first part, over a Detroit beat, is mostly a normal song full of references to drugs, guns, Los Diablos, to members like Sombra, Pressure, or Elade, and Santeria deities.
Controlamos la calle, la metro Santurce, todas quieren los diablos lloren. Ando modo ninja, diablo como Luisda, pero cazando flow casco. Los Midnight, Later y Precho, el cabrón yo nunca me tranco. Decapito gallina, comida a la tierra, le doy vida al santo.
And then the beat switches, and this is where Chimmy would start dissing everyone in the Los Popos lineup. He would directly mention Hades for the first time.
Que los míos corren, a ti se te olvida que estoy llorando en torre. Los últimos 2 que faltaron la cara les borre. En Santurce me muevo flow Pablo, el 300 que los deja calvo. Yo soy de Lloren, cabrón, no de Morovi. Jade un bobo, cabrón, como Obi.
He also accused Black Any of being gay and goes after his manager, Pepe Quintana, saying he's going to lose his investment with Black Any.
Dieron los diablos en misión, no te cojo en serio, tú eres bugarrón. Black Any está bajo 1 millón, Pepe está borracho con esa visión.
And also mentions for the first time Jamel, who's part of La 7 Records, a faction of Los Popos, connected to Slick Lamina, Black Any, and 7 from Russell in Philly.
Que me mama el bicho a las 7, Gemer, todos esos cabrones dan risa. Cabrón, nos vengaba a tu hermano, cogiste pasaje, tú lo que de risa.
He would also say that they took Hades' chain during the red carpet, to which we have no evidence. Only a couple hours later, Hades would respond with La Última Cena, or The Last Supper, using The Kiss of Judas painting as the song cover. This song is way more straight to the point, and in it, Hades would open with a sample of the Willie Colon and Hector Lavoe song, Tú no puedes conmigo.
Que tú no puedes conmigo.
He then calls Chimmy a Judas for dissing him, even though they had a cordial relationship and had been working together for years, but also for not doing anything when his friend Pressure and Chef were getting beat up back in August. He finishes his disses towards Los Diablos by mentioning Yeruza, saying he would be embarrassed because instead of keeping his legacy how they're supposed to, they are now known as Corre or Runaway. The fans' response was clear, and most people unanimously declared Hades the winner of this first round. But that was just the beginning of Los Diablos' fall from grace. On November 3rd, 2024, Hades would go back on the offensive, this time releasing Golpe de Estado with Black Any. And then a couple weeks later, once again, Midnight and Dom West would walk into Anubis and La Positiva, Hades' manager back then, at a TikTok event in Miami, and they would brawl once again, leaving a bunch of hilarious images. On November 27th, Chimmy would fulfill his promise he made on Baby Father of bringing his Lambos to Calle Cuatro to celebrate Thanksgiving. Also dropping the song Lucifer. Even though the song has some bars directed to Hades and his gang, I would say this is mostly directed towards Anuel. Fans would still consider Los Popos as the winners in the rap beef for now. Things would change forever for Young Chimmy, as on December 12, 2024, a federal grand jury in the District of Puerto Rico returned an indictment charging Young Chimmy with 2 counts of firearm violations. Chimmy would be arrested at the airport in Puerto Rico, He faces up 10 years in prison for each count. In chats found in Cidobleto's phone back in 2024, things will make Chimmy's situation even worse. The messages were exchanged with Cidobleto's manager, who was accused along with 55 others in the indictment. Evidence also includes a video of young Chimmy firing an automatic pistol out the window of a moving car and a photo of a switch. Despite these charges, Chimmy was not charged with belonging to the gang. Federal authorities highlighted that the gang operated across multiple public housing projects in Puerto Rico, selling drugs, selling guns, etc. They also noted how the gangs reached a peace agreement called La Paz to maintain separate leadership and avoid internal conflict. He had been denied bail twice at this point and is still awaiting federal trial. The FBI would later impound Chimmy's Lambos. Obviously, his arrest would dramatically slow his career down, with Chimmy adding up to the list of Los Diablos members behind bars. Along with Elede and Cidobleta, only Pressure, Sombra, and Slater would be left to put in work in the music game. They would continue to go back and forth with Los Popos during 2025, even though it looked like the tension would ease over time. But in the streets, it was a different story. In March 2025, Pressure's manager and Los Diablos' current boss in the streets at the moment, El Chef, would be arrested. The motion is sealed, so we don't know the charges at the moment, but we'll keep an eye on the situation. On June 7th, police in Vega Baja, Puerto Rico, identified the victims of a double homicide reported in the Villa Colombo neighborhood. The victims were ID'd as La Eque 27 and his manager. Officers responded to a 911 call and found both men shot dead inside a gray 2018 Honda Accord. On October 1st, Pressure's brother, Panza, was shot 35 times in Kensington while he was riding an e-bike only a couple blocks away from Weymouth. Panza was an important figure for Pressure and Sombra and was frequently seen in their videos. He was buried in Puerto Rico days after his death. Only a few days after that, a well-known member of LFNM and someone close to young Chimmy would lose his life. Brian Cortillo, aka Mariachi, was a well-known and well-respected man on the streets of Santurce. He died at the age of 33 on October 6, 2025, after being attacked with a sword and arriving severely injured at the hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. Mariachi was very loved in his hood and often mentioned by many artists in their songs. Tons of condolences, love, and well wishes were sent on social media. His death is most likely unrelated, but it's an important piece in the streets of Santurce.
Como el de Brian Cortijo. Chimi, tú me dices, papi, que ando con 40 mariachi, pasamos por allí y le damos una serenata. Descanso eterno, ya que brille, por siempre, pa' mi hermano el mariachi. Ay, que yo me muera, sé que tendrás que llorar. Todos. Pero mariachi te va a tocar toda la guitarra.
And just a few days before this video's recording, social media went crazy over an event that took place at the international airport in San Juan when two members of Pressure and Los Diablos de la Weymouth Circle, Child 777 and Ore 47, would allegedly run up on JTLG, who's a part of Los Del Campo, a set tightly associated with Black Any, and who has also been a part of the back and forth dissing Los Diablos.
Yo no ronco, yo si actúo, yo los compro si son puros. Y esta gente quiere ver mi cara pinta en un muro. Los del campo en Cagua y desde Cagua, el Southside de Milwaukee. Dime, M, ¿por qué será que toda esta gente nos teme? Ando con todos los nenes grabando y contando los de 100. Me roncan por la red y cuando me ven, they keep it walking.
And took his chain along with some other belongings. Orde and Child would obviously run to Instagram afterwards, showing off the chain and taunting the ops. Just one day after the incident, Child and Orde would drop La Última Escena Noche de Brujas, the last scene, Night of the Witches. This is a very interesting one for a lot of reasons. In this visualizer type video, we can see a lot of imagery that, when combined with the lyrics, paint a disturbing picture. Child's intro for this song starts by saying, "It's been like 4 and 2 weeks and you ain't avenged your homies." Then in his verse, he says,
Mataron un brother, al otro me hirieron, pero ustedes saben las bebichos lo que hicieron. Sale
Then Ore opens up his verse by telling us a lot of interesting stuff. First, he goes into detail about the situation with the alleged chain snatching at the airport, even showing a video, supposedly, of what happened.
Saliendo del aeropuerto, cabrón, yo te pillo envuelto. Te quito la cadena y te damos contra el cemento. Pidiendo la cadena, suplicando medio tuerto.
Then he said something that caught me totally off guard, that made me start connecting some dots. He talks about someone's wife getting hit by the gang.
Tu mujer preñada, cogiendo cocotazo. Yo no sé si ya te dijo que ese no es tu hijo.
At first, I didn't pay much mind to this bar, but it will be brung back up soon. More importantly, Ore says this.
Culetazo pa'l bigote, cabrón, tú no eres bichote. Se mudan pa' Colombia antes que la guerra explote.
Okay, so this is where the title of the song becomes relevant. The title is both a play of words with the name of Hade's diss to Chimmy, La Última Cena, and also mention Tu Noche de Brujas, or the Night of the Witches, which is, as you've already figured out, Halloween. And why is this important? Well, that when the war starts part would be a generic drill bar if it wasn't for one important piece of information. Hades had been doing pretty well for himself since Jimmy has been in jail, and this upcoming 31st, both Hades 6'6" and Slick Lamina will have a big concert at the Coca-Cola Music Hall, one of the largest concert venues in Puerto Rico. Yes, you've heard it right, on Halloween. And it seems that that's not in Los Diablos' plans. After the hook, there's a short interlude featuring the voice of an unidentified person sending a clear warning.
Cuando bajemos pa' allá, papi, vamos a bajar con 18 lagartos, ¿oíste? 6 por cada calle, y cuando lo metemos pa' allá se va a ir la luz cuando retumbemos. ¿Oíste? Los rifles tienen frío y el cale caliente.
The message is crystal clear, and the visuals with alligators eating some poor, terrified duck is a statement in of itself. We already know what the alligators mean, but why ducks? Why not octopuses?
No le dijiste a tu mujer que te pegaron el SIDA. Por estar clavando pato, estás muerto hace rato. Yo no te he matado porque si te mato, me mato.
As an outro, we can hear a compilation of voice notes from several different members from different affiliated hoods backing up Los Diablos' message. And then we see Ore, Child, and the gang throwing up G27 and a bike with a mariachi tribute shirt on it. One of the voice notes is particularly intriguing.
Chal, voy a ser preciso. Yo ando fase 4 con la N y el correcamino. Y con el 47 que me dejó el panzón. Esto es de Santurce a las tetas y de las tetas hasta Philly. Tírense atentamente, que en paz descanse cojones, el de los 47, hueputa.
Mentioning Panza, his AK-47, Santurce, and Philly, right after showing Mariachi's picture at the end of a diss song effectively called Last Seen Halloween. Also, them mentioning the fact that they're being investigated hits different after we got the news that both 7 from Russell and Weymouth are targets of law enforcement right now. We will drop videos dedicated to these topics, as well as videos for a lot of other things mentioned here. In part 2, we'll look at the fall of Los Diablos and the indictment that hit Weymouth Street, which FBI Director Cash Patel is calling the largest drug bust in Philadelphia history. We'll break it all down to see if that's true, so make sure you stay tuned for part 2. I'm gonna leave it there for now. Thanks for watching American Confidential, and until next time, be safe.
We have permanently removed a drug trafficking organization out of the streets of Philadelphia, and they're going to stop pouring guns and chemicals and drugs into our communities.
The feds say the operation revolved around one man, Jose Antonio Morales Nieves, a.k.a. Flaco. Prosecutors say he ran a drug network that stretched from Puerto Rico to the Kensington neighborhood of Philadelphia. Nieves controlled several properties on the street, allegedly offering free rent to tenants who agreed to move his product. In the 173-page indictment obtained by Newsmax, federal prosecutors outlined a narcotics ring that ran like a business. The Weymouth crew kept a schedule of who did what and when. Runners resupplied the drugs, caseworkers managed the drugs, enforcers protected the drugs, and of course the hustlers or street dealers made the transactions. All of it held together by fear, allegedly through violence and intimidation.
They enforced their territory through the threats of assaults, shootings, and murder.
And according to authorities, this drug syndicate wasn't shy about flaunting their violence, posing with illegal firearms and the stacks of cash those weapons were used to secure. But that flaunt came with a price: handcuffs, And the Justice Department's warning to other traffickers in Philadelphia is simple. You're next.
You will see our faces again. The next indictment has a space with your name on it.